So today we have Whispers of the Old Gods as the set that I want to talk about. This is actually a really interesting set. A lot of people do say that it is their favorite Hearthstone expansion, and I think there are a lot of cards that could be buffed to be actually playable in an interesting way, and I think that that would be really fun to do. Of course, we're going to start with the Druid, like always. So for the first Druid card I want to do is Mark of Yashara. This one, I mean, it's not the most flashy card, it's not the most interesting card, but in today's day and age, Mark of Yashara should be +2/+3. You can compare it to oh god, what is it called? Sorry, Trusty Companion, which is the new Shaman card where it's give a minion +2/+3 and draw a minion of its tribe. Mark of Yashara, to be fair, would be +2/+3 if it's a beast draw card, relatively the same. I don't see any reason why this would be, anything special. You can maybe make the argument, oh, make it +3/+2, but I don't think buff spells being like something like 3/+2 is fair for the game. I think it's kind of toxic, and I think that we're in baseline with other cards that have been recently printed, which is kind of the whole idea of this series, right? Put cards to be power level where they could see play because they're more on an equal level to newer cards. Then you have Fandel Staghelm. This is a fan favorite card. People love this card. People love combining choose one effects. We already know that combining choose one effects at 1 mana is too strong. It got nerfed to 2 mana, and it had the Forge with the spell that was printed in Titans. I forget what it's called. So I was thinking, okay, I think Fandel could easily go to like maybe 3 mana. Obviously, you change the stats. What if it was like a 2/5, right? But I kind of think that it should be like your choose one cards have both powers effects combined. I think it should be Battle Cry. You should both effects combined until the end of your next turn. Yes, this is a big, big, big buff. It's already a 1 mana buff, but it becomes better because Fandel is almost always going to die. Your opponent's going to want to kill it. So now it's going to last for 2 turns. Will this affect Wild? I kind of don't think so, but I really wish it would. Fandel is a really interesting card. I would have done 2 mana 2/3, but people were like, "Oh, you did it too much," and like it would kind of push it too close to the Shadows, where when you play a choose one card, you get the second card to your hand. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make it a little more expensive, but it's gonna have more of an effect. I think this would be fun and interesting. I think the card's called Keeper Steladris. But yeah, I think this would be a lot more interesting of a version of Fandel. Fiery Bat is a minion that has been power crept a million times over. Think of cards like Shadow Bomber that are just so insanely better than this card. It's still worse than Leper Gnome, things of that nature. I think what you could do is first you make it. I think 3/1 is a great stat line for minions like this, especially with a random effect died to it. Because I'm not going to change the random effect. And I think that it should be something like this, right? It puts it much more in line with Shadow Bomber. It's a death rattle, so it's a lot. It is allowed to be a lot stronger than Fillet Fighter, and it also hits random things, so it can still be stronger than Fillet Fighter. That's the thing. I don't really see why this would be too strong for the Hunter class, especially since Aggro Hunter has Face Hunter has just not been a thing for a long, long time, especially in Wild or in Wild. I don't really see why we couldn't have Fiery Bat be something like this. So it's actually a threatening minion, and Hunter actually has threatening 1-drops, which if it's supposed to be a face deck, it should have threatening 1-drops. So I think that this would be more fair. 1 mana 3/1, deal 3 to a random enemy because it can still hit a minion if it dies, and it still has the issue of being a Hunter minion that has 1 health, so that it will die really easily to any kind of ping in the entire game. The next card I want to talk about is Call of the Wild. This could actually be a really interesting card the way that I'm thinking of it. Of course, 8 mana is incredibly too bad for a card like this. We just got Patrick Pals, which is in. So I'm trying to think of a way to make this work, and there isn't really an elegant way to make it work. So I was thinking, what if it was, similar to the, bananas and barrel cards that we received in Festival of Legends. So I was thinking, Animal Companion. 3. Wait. your next one costs 1 less. 3 remain. Wait. Leok, Puffer, and Misha remain. So this is kind of wordy, don't get me wrong, and of course it's not going to be 8 mana. I want to put it at 3 mana. So I was thinking, okay, you play it for 3 mana, and it's just Animal Companion, right? Then you can play it again for 2 mana, and then you summon whichever one you choose from one of the 2 that you haven't gotten yet, and then you have 1 mana to summon the next one. Will that be too good? Yeah, probably. Actually, now that I think about it, it's probably be 4 mana. But that's 9 mana in total. It's kind of the thing. I don't like that, right? I don't know how you would elegantly make this work mana cost wise. So I was thinking like 3 mana is probably more fair because then it's 3, 2, and 1, which is 6 total. But that's a lot of mana. The issue is if you put it to 4, it's 4, 3, and 2, which is 9 mana, which is more than it was originally. Does that matter? Probably not, but like, I'm not too sure, right? If anyone has like a way that they think that you can make this work elegantly, I'm trying to think. I don't know how you would make it work elegantly, right? The idea is you don't want it to just be shit, like just be kind of bad Animal Companion, right? I want it to still be, a lot of mana that has to get spent all together, but summoning but like playing 1 mana to summon Huffer or something, people are going to get really upset about that. Is the thing. So I don't work like wording wise. But I think that this, like, the thematic of this is very interesting, right? This should be in italics. Think about it. But yeah, I think this is actually a really cool card. I'm actually going to download it right now. I like this card a lot. But I think that, like, the idea of this fits the basic idea of Call of the Wild, right? Where you would summon all of the animal companions, but it makes it so it's a lot more in line power level rather than being 8 fucking mana. And, it's still technically about as good as Patrick Pals, especially Patrick Pals. Yes, I know it's kind of crazy if you get like the 1 mana Huffer, but like I don't really know how else you would word it to work properly the way that I'm thinking of it. So, yeah. For Mage, I was thinking we could do Servant of Yogg-Saron. This is a really, really simple change. I think you would just do targets enemies if possible. I think that would be a really good change. It makes the card more in line with a lot of cards that have been recently released. I don't know why it's not gold. I also think. Wait, is it a 5/4? Yeah, it's a 5/4. I mean, would it be too strong to make it a 4 mana 5/4 that targets enemies if possible? I really don't think so. Like, there's so many bad 5 mana spell or 5 or more spells that like I don't see why this would be too strong in any way. It would make Casino Mage a lot more interesting. It would make the card a little bit better, so you could do maybe run it and things like that. This card, in theory, is pretty fun, but like the way that it currently is implemented is just so terrible. Then for Mage, we also have Anomalous. I like a lot of people have said that that Anomalous is one of their favorite cards. Over the years I've seen, and I think that a really elegant way you can do it is you can completely keep the stats because they don't matter. I think 6 mana and then give it Rush. Maybe 8 is a little too much, but it's pretty iconic for the card. I mean, I just think that like doing something like this would make the card significantly better. Again, as always, I don't really think this makes the card playable, but like if you keep buffing the numbers bit by bit, eventually cards become, too good for what they should be. And like these older sets are just filled with uninteresting cards or cards that have already been buffed. And like I don't really want to buff cards that have already been buffed is kind of the thing. Unless like they're Servant of Yogg-Saron. But I mean, I just feel like I don't see any reason why 6 mana Rush Anomalous wouldn't be fair for Mage. I mean, like, what's going to use this? Mezzadune? I guess, dude. If you're playing a 5 mana 6/5 do nothing to draw this, you know what? You maybe should get rewarded personally. That's what I think. I already mentioned this in my TGT video, is that I was going to change Battle of Inquisitor to start of game. Old. Your hero power becomes summon a 1/1. Summon a 1/1 Murloc. I think that this is a lot more elegant of a way to use the card. It's still a shitty 1-mana 1/3. Yeah, I get the start of game effect should be on legendaries, but like, who fucking cares that much, dude? It's not that big of a change that this card is causing. And like, meh. Come on, dude. We can have funny hero power based Murloc Paladin. It's not that strong of a card. It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, if you have becomes obsolete, who cares? Maybe if you have two of them, it could summon 2 1/1 Murlocs, right? That would be cool. Here, like, if it's your second visitor upgrades. Your second Bile Thin. Yeah, I mean, that's really wordy. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, but what if it was like that? Your second Vile Thin Inquisitor upgrades this hero power, right? So if you have 2 of them, you summon 2 1/1 Murlocs. No, I don't really see that being too strong. Don't get me wrong. Like, it would be really funny. It would be interesting. You could play a Murloc Paladin wild and have, consistent Murlocs for your cards to give you a lot more gas for your synergy cards, like your what is it, Murkwater? Not Murkwater Scout, Lushwater Scout, stuff like that. I think that would be. Don't see any reason why this would be too strong, and it's kind of just a cool card. People like Vile Thin Inquisitor. It's a fan favorite card. I think this would be a much better way to make this card be playable and Murloc Paladin be playable. Another card I think could be interesting is a Light in the Darkness. So we had Cactus Construct in Badlands. I was thinking, okay, what if it was kind of similar to that? Discover a Paladin minion and I was thinking, that costs 2 or less, summon, or I guess it would be period. Summon it, and then go there, and give it, let's say, +1, +2, right? So discover a Paladin minion that costs 2 or less, summon it, and give it +1, +2. This would be quite good, don't get me wrong. Paladin minions that cost 1 and 2 are pretty good. So it spawn it, and it has buff. The issue is, it is random, of course. Maybe you could say +1, +1, but I think +1, +2 would push it a little. It would be a really interesting card in, like, say, an even Paladin, where they're only running specific cards for their call to arms, but then you could have this as a way to get, for your turns in it, not be detrimental to draw those 2 mana minions, right? You could have this instead, and it would be a really strong turn 2 play for like an even Paladin, or just a genuinely strong turn 2 card for like a big Paladin as well. I think this would be really interesting, and I kind of wish that this is where the card had gone. I think this would be really cool. Maybe, yeah, discover a Paladin minion that costs 2 or less, and summon it, and, or wait, here, maybe summon copy. That way you get the minion to your hand. Maybe that's too good. Maybe it should just summon initially. But I think this would be actually really cool, and I kind of like this design a lot. I hope that we get a card like this eventually. This is another expansion where Priest specifically has a lot of really fucking boring cards. So I'm just going to pick Shadow Word Horror and Embrace the Shadow, make them -1 mana. I'm sorry, like, these cards are all so boring and uninteresting, and buffing them would either be broken as shit if Herod Oblage was like buffed by like 2 mana or something like that, or with certain changes. So like, wow, Shadow Word Horror, boom, 3 mana. This being a thought of card again, it would be quite good in things like Shadow Priest or Pirate Rogue. It would be, just a card that people would have on their radar again. Wow. Embrace the Shadow. Wow. Imagine if you put it at 1 mana and wow, suddenly that like heal damage priest that sometimes makes waves becomes a little bit better, because now that you have half the mana cost that you have to spend for Embrace the Shadow, so you can use more spells in that turn. Wow, oh my gosh, wow, priest is such an interesting class and definitely hasn't had terrible design for years and years and years and years. Wow. So for Rogue, actually, I want to do Zera. This is a really interesting card. All of the toxins are 1 mana. They're not too strong by any means. I actually think that Zera is one of those cards that could easily have been reprinted today as like a 1 mana fucking card, right? Like maybe a 1 mana 1/2. Battlecry, Death Rattle, add a random toxic card to your hand. Here, let me pull up the toxin cards, actually. You have King's Blood Toxin, which is 1 mana, draw a card. Fire Bloom Toxin is 1 mana, deal 2. Blood Fistel Toxin, return a friendly minion to your hand, it costs 2 less. Maybe it would be too good with Zera, actually, now that I think about it. Briarthorn Toxin, 1 mana, and Fade Leaf Toxin, 1 mana, give a friendly minion stealth till your next turn. I think if Zera were printed today, it would be 1 mana. It would probably be a little rebalanced, right? Like stuff like Blood Fistel Toxin and Briarthorn Toxin would probably be like +2 attack, and then this would be like not. It would be like a. I don't know how you would probably just make this not be able to work with Zera because, yeah, if you could just bounce it infinitely, that would be pretty good. But I mean, there's still 5 toxins, so it's not really that high of a chance. It is a lot more similar to the concoction cards that we got in Nathria this way. I think that Zera easily could be like 1 mana 1/2. I mean, maybe you could say it should be like a 2 mana 2/2, and that would be also fair as well. Like you'd easily do like 2 mana 2/2, but like I don't know. I think that Zera being a 1 mana 2/2 makes it an interesting card, right, for rogue decks, right? If you play it in like a Miracle Rogue or something like that, you can get a couple bonus procs. Of course, Miracle Rogue probably doesn't run this card, but you get the idea, right? I feel like this could easily have just been something like this if it were reprinted today, or if it were buffed to be power level of cards today. And I kind of like this design a lot more, especially because 4 mana 3/2 is so fucking bad, dude. Like, what the hell? The other card I want to buff actually is Shadow Strike. So if you make it 2 mana, it becomes a Mind Blast for Rogue that only works when your opponent is at full health. Would that be too strong? Not even in the slightest. They printed the tradable, it's like SI7 Extortion for Rogue, which was Sinister Strike, 1 mana, deal 3 with tradable, but because it also had the... Sorry, I just got a phone call. Where the fuck was I? I was talking about Shadow Strike. I think at 2 mana, deal 5. It's just Mind Blast, but only works on undamaged characters. SI7 Extortion is Sinister Strike, but only works on undamaged characters. Yeah, but it has tradable, so things of that nature. I think this would be completely fair. I think it would make the card a lot more interesting, and I just kind of like the idea behind Shadow Strike. I like the art a lot. I like the animation. I like the card. I think it would be cool if it were like this. I know I mention all the time that I don't like buffing cards that have already been buffed, but I think Hallal was not buffed enough to hit the mark. I think that it should probably say like spell damage +1, your nature, hold that, spells cost 1 less, and then your spells have lifesteal. I think this would make it a more interesting kind of control shaman card. You would not actually run this in like a Frog Shaman or anything because you already have better options in, of course, Flash of Lightning, but Radiance of Ashara. So this doesn't really affect any of those kinds of decks, but it would make it so that like a, spell heavy Shaman deck can actually have the healing because the 5 mana attacks of Hallal is the thing. Yeah, so I feel like adding your nature spells cost 1 less really does make this card significantly better. 5 mana attacks is just so unreal for this effect, right? Like, the issue is Hallal also has spell damage, so I can't make it cheaper or it'd be like way too good. If it didn't have spell damage, I think this card could easily be 3 mana, but it has spell damage, and I don't want to remove that just for like to make it cheaper. People didn't like when I did that to Dalaran Aspirant, even though the card became significantly better by making it 2 mana from 4, but whatever. I think this would be really interesting personally, and I kind of like this design a lot more. Another card that is actually really interesting, in my opinion, is Eternal Sentinel. I think that this card has a lot of ways you could go about it. I was toying with, okay, you can make it 1 mana, like a 1 mana 2/1, and that would be pretty decent. You can make it like 2 mana, and that gains like +1/+1 for each overloaded mana crystal you unlock, and I think that would be really good as well. I'm not too sure which direction you should go with, because I want this card to be like a staple in overloaded aggro shaman. So I think it would be most fair as like a 1 mana 2/1. Battlecry, unlock your overloaded mana crystals. I think that really fits the thematic of like an aggro overload shaman. I think getting +1 attack or like +1/+1 per overloaded mana crystal would be a little too fucking strong, because like say you play like Perpetual Flame and then this on 4 against like another aggro deck, and then you get like a 2 mana 10/9, that would be way too good. Yeah, it would be really funny, but that would just not be fun for the other player. Toxic for any aggro deck you would ever play against. It would be way too good. So I think at 1 mana, it would push the idea of like an aggro overload shaman without being way too overpowered. For Warlock, I was thinking Darkshire Councilman. It's an interesting enough zoo card. I was thinking, what if it was like a 1/3, maybe 1/2, so it's really easy to kill, so it doesn't scale too crazy out of control. Something like that could be kind of interesting. I think 1/3 is a little more fair. Still dies to just like all the million dark bombs that are in the format. It gets traded off by like Fillet Fighter, by Treasure Guard or Treasure Distributor, by Shadow Bomber, things of that nature. I think it would push Zoo Warlock in a good direction. And honestly, I mean, it's a cool card. People liked this card. It was pretty well liked when you would have Zoo Warlocks of this era, and I think it's just cool to make it a little bit better. And then we have Doom. I was thinking there's no reason Doom couldn't be 8 mana in today's game. It would still be absolutely terrible, yes, but like, what's it called? Twisted Nether hasn't been a ran card in Warlock in absolutely forever. Plus, the drawing cards for each minion you destroy is a downside, so like, I mean, yeah, drawing a few cards is nice, but if you're drawing like 10 cards, that is a downside no matter how you try and swing it. So I don't really see why Doom could be mana. Like, I just actually. Oh my god, it's the most broken card ever printed. Dude, you get 2/2 every single time this breaks? Oh my god. That's what people really thought when this card came out. I mean, just like 4 mana. Wow, 4 mana, re-equip this weapon, Death Rattle. Wow, oh my god. Wow, dude, it's unreal. This is what the card should have been design-wise. Bump it down by 1 mana so it's actually, something you can run in today's game, and then you make the Death Rattle to re-equip the weapon. It just makes it so you have a 2 attack weapon all the time, right? It's still, you don't want to just say, oh, it has infinite durability or it can't be broken or anything like that, because then buffs would be too good. 2 durability is really good because, yeah, you could buff it, but it's going to break after 2 swings, right? And then it'll just go back to a 2/2. I think this is a much more elegant way to make this card work. I think the card actually becomes quite decent with this, having, the 2/2 weapon permanently. It's not that good, actually, because a lot of warrior decks still want to run weapons, so, like, this is a trade-off, right? Do you have your permanent weapon that, if you run 2 of, is completely useless, or do you actually run weapons that do anything? So I think that this would be completely fine. Another card that I think could have some pretty like big changes and still probably be fair is Blood to Ichor. I think you remove the if it survives completely. Deal 1 damage to a minion, and then summon a 2/2 slime. I think the slime could maybe have taunt, or maybe be like a 2 or a 1/2 slime with taunt. Something like that, right? I don't see any world where this would be too strong. You take away the condition of it has to survive to and one attack to give it taunt. I think this would be really fine. It would be fair. This would be actually pretty interesting in things like Skipper Warrior, because now you get 1 damage tick and 2 health for your Skipper, so you could say, get more armor. I think this would be an actually very interesting card with these changes. I want to talk about, I didn't even look at any of the other neutrals yet. I wanted to do Zera specifically. It's obviously the first one that shows up, but I think each turn that's in your hand, transform it into a random minion, it costs 1 less. This probably wouldn't make Zera's good. Don't get me wrong. However, it would make it infinitely more interesting as a card. If you discover it, things like that, it could be really fun. You could just run it because it's a fun card now. It costs you 1 less, means you could cheat out some pretty nice things, maybe 1 or 2 turns earlier, depending on the coin, than you could before. And I think that's kind of fun. I think this is where the card should have been in the first place, but I understand why old Blizzard wouldn't have done it, but this not getting buffed, like a gigantic miss. Another completely unplayable legendary is Hoger Doom of Elwyn. I think that this card could be like fucking 5 mana, 6/6 with the exact same text, and it would still be bad. I think that you could maybe make it like 4 mana, maybe 3/5 with the same text, and it would still be bad. I think that this is one of those cards that, like, if it had taunt, it would probably be too strong. So maybe if it was like, what? Like 5 mana, 2/5 with taunt. And then whatever this minion takes damage, summon a 2/2 null taunt. Maybe a little too good. Maybe you make it like 2/4. I think that at 7 mana, there's just no way to make it work. And I think that keeping it at an equal stat line would be too good. I think that this card has to have taunt, which means that it should have lowered attack because it's also summoning more and more minions. And it is just completely useless otherwise. Maybe you can, maybe 5 mana and like a 2/6, something like that. Something in that range of 4 or 5 mana, 2/4, 2/6, maybe 3/6, etc. is where this card should be if it were to be like a reprinted card today. I like it at 4 mana because you can run it in even decks, but you know, that's just me. I can understand why you'd think at 5 mana, like something like this would be a lot more fair, and I completely get that. I think this would be fun and interesting, like now like this, because you drop it in like, say, a Reno deck on 5, and then your opponent has to deal with it. You have to get through a lot of taunts. Maybe it's not. I mean, 2/2s aren't that big of a deal. I don't know, man. I'm struggling doing a lot of these cards because the old cards are bad and poorly designed is the thing. That's the thing, is a lot of these cards are really overcosted because they're also poorly designed, and that, like, if you try and add things like taunt or stuff like that, it really, that would be the only way the card could be good, but then it would be too good. So I'm really struggling with a lot of these older cards. Once we get to newer expansions, it won't be as big of a deal, but fuck, man, it's so bad. Okay, and then the last card I want to talk about is Ancient Harbinger. I think this card actually should be changed because Cthulhu was changed. This was supposed to be a Cthulhu synergy card. It's the only one I want to bring up the entire video because I'm not really interested in changing the Cthulhu cards because they were already changed. This is a Cthulhu synergy card that was not buffed with all the other ones. I think the first thing you have to do is make it 8 cost, but then, isn't 8 cost technically worse than 10 cost? I think you can make this card like 4 mana, maybe like a 4 mana 4/4. And if it, the interesting thing about this card is because it doesn't say draw, it actually gets around a lot of draw negatives, like things like, I can't remember what it's called, like Farwatch Post and Ashen Elemental, because it's put instead of draw. And then this, you could actually run this not to draw Cthulhu. There's a lot of 8 mana cards that, there are 8 mana minions that a lot of decks have hard access drawing outside of Polk Out, and I think card would probably see play. If Odin ever gets reverted, this is probably really scary for Even Warrior, but like, I don't think Odin's ever going to get reverted, kind of. I mean, after last year's revert fiasco, I mean, like, come on, dude. There's no way Odin's getting reverted of all cards. So I think that Ancient Harbinger could be something like this, 4 mana 4/4. That being said, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you think. Did I change any cards you thought needed change? Did I miss any cards you thought needed change? Do you like any of the changes that I proposed? And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Subscribe. Subscribe. After me.